Hi, we're going to look at models of measurement and evaluation in public relations. Now, note that since 1950s thereabout, a lot of public relations experts like Watson, Grunig, Cutlip Center, McNamara, Fairchild have tried to put together models or processes that they believe if public relations personnel follow, they'll be able to accurately measure and evaluate public relations activities. Please note that the models we are going to look at are not 100%. What I mean is, there have been criticisms of these models as to what they should have added, what they could have added. Some other criticisms are that the models use different terminologies, and so because of the lack of an understanding or an agreement as to what terminologies to use, it appears we keep going round in circles. What do I mean? For instance, Fairchild in his model used the word outtake. So he says input, output, outtakes before he mentioned outcomes. Now, this was the first time that outtake had been used in any model of public relations ever. But let me not jump the gun. Let us look at the models we have today, and then at the end of the day, maybe we can talk some more about the challenges that these models present. Now, models are to help give a pictorial view of an idea or a process that the author has. So, the models we are going to look at are all pictorial descriptions of how public relations personnel should go about their measurement and evaluation processes. So, some of the models we're going to look at today, remember there are more than these models available, but we're looking at the more popular ones. Newer models are coming all the time, but normally, if it is not widely accepted, we wait till more and more research has been done on these models before we give it a thumbs up. I'm sure you are already aware of that. So we'll be looking at the PI model, McNamara's pyramid model, the effectiveness yardstick, PRE process, continuing model, and then the short-term model, and the unified theory as well, which we'll be looking at. So let us begin with the PII model. Now, the PII is an acronym which stands for preparation, implementation, and impact. Now, what's Cutler Center and Boom talking about? What they're saying is, well, any activity that public relations have go through these three stages, which is the preparation stage, the implementation stage, and the impact stage. Now, from the diagram you see, the preparation stage has to do with you focusing on the quality of the messages that you're going to present, the appropriateness of the message. That is this message good for this audience or for that audience? During the implementation stage, that is when the activity is being undertaken, Catholic Center and Broom are saying that the things we measure, the number of messages that we have sent to the media, the number of messages that we have placed, number of messages that we have received, these are the things that we look at during the implementation phase, because that is when you are undertaking the actual activity or activity. So these are some of the things that they are telling us that we ought to draw our attention to and try to measure or find information about them. They also say that the final stage is the impact stage. Now, that is where you try to see the social and cultural changes that you have been able to bring about, the number of people who are repeating a certain behavior that you have encouraged through your activities. Now, remember that Scholars like McNamara, for instance, say that the aim of communication, ultimate aim, is to change behavior. And that idea is held by a number of these authors that we are going to look at. So realize that all the processes that we'll be looking at would have at the final stage a consideration of a behavioral change. But we would also come across a theory or a model, a model which does not talk about behavioral change. And we will see why that model decided not to talk about behavioral change. So that is the PII model in a nutshell. Now, so in the preparation level, you need analysis. You would need to look at your goals and objective setting. And of course, what are you analyzing at that moment? In the beginnings, what you are analyzing is how things are as we speak. So you're conducting research, you're getting your data together, trying to find out what stakeholders think or hold, positions they hold about the issue you are trying to work on. And when you're done with all this, then the stage is set for the implementation. And it's at the implementation level that you look at going through or implementing it as it you planned in the preparation stage. Yeah. So all the initiatives, the resources, duties, responsibilities that have been given to anybody and everybody, it is at the implementation stage that everybody steps on the accelerator and makes sure that what they what they have planned in the planning stage goes according to what it is that they want. Now, of course, all of these things is hinged on the objectives that they have set. So the activities that they undertake will be based on the objectives that they have set, or the overarching aim or goal of the whole activity or group of activities. And then, as earlier mentioned, finally we get to the impact, where we look at attitudinal, behavioral, and cultural change, which is only some of the changes that we may be anticipating. Now we go to McNamara's pyramid model. Now, McNamara brought this model in 92 and upgraded it in 2002. Now let's look at the model in detail. So McNamara, as you see over here, it's a pyramid with the base being the largest, of course, and that is where inputs are, and then we have outputs, and then we have outcomes. As you can see, McNamara's pyramid is also a three-step process, just like the PII that we encountered not long ago. Now, what is McNamara saying about this pyramid model? McNamara says that at the base level, the beginning is the input, or where we call formative research. Now, when we say formative research, that is a research you conduct to find out the status quo, how things are now. And the relevance of the formative research is that it informs you as to the nature of the objectives to set, the nature of your strategies and tactics, which media to use, which media to prefer over the other, which platforms and people to involve or not involve, and a whole lot. So at the input level, you look see things like quality of message presentation. So we're looking at the message that we are presenting. How are we going to present a quality message to the people? Is the message appropriate for the target audience? Yeah, is the medium appropriate, as we have already discussed? Now, one interesting thing about McNamara's model is that McNamara adds applicable methodologies, as we can see on the right side of the screen. Applicable methodologies. So, unlike other models that just tell us, oh, this is the input stage, this is the output stage, this is the outcome stage, and then walk away, without practicalizing it and letting us know that, okay, so if at the input stage, this is what you're saying, how do I measure things, or how do I evaluate things at the input stage or at the output stage? So this pyramid model is one of the few models that try to practicalize it for, well, practitioners, so that when they are implementing it in their jobs or wherever they find themselves, it is easy for them. Because one of the major criticisms of the various models is that it is often theoretical and not practical. Like, how do we go about realizing this in our workplaces? And that is one of the reasons why measurement and evaluation is not often done in workplaces. Watson has conducted a research on the subject matter. McNamara has conducted a research on the subject matter. I think Watson did it in UK. McNamara, I think it was in Australia and probably in UK as well. And what they found was a lot of practitioners say they do not undergo measurement and evaluation because of two key reasons. They gave a number of reasons, but the two key reasons in both research was one, budget, and then two, lack of know-how. So they do not know how to go about actualizing the models that abound in the literature. So McNamara tried to make it easier for them. Now, so how did he go about making it easier? That is through the applicable methodologies. So, for instance, if you want to check the appropriateness of message content at the input level, let's use the highlighter. Okay, so that you can see what it is I'm pointing to. So, appropriateness of medium selected. You see that there's a dot that leads to the methodologies that you can use to do this. And some of the methodologies will be case studies, feedback, that is trying to get feedback from target audience. Yeah. So now interviews, pre-testing, etc. Now you realize that this strategy, which is the feedback and the interviews, they are used even in the movie industry, yeah, and alcoholic industry, beverages, where when they produce a sample, they select their target audience and then they let them taste it, or they let them have an experience with whatever product or service that they are about to send out. And that would let them know whether whatever it is that they are sending out will be well received. So it's the same with the message content and everything over here as we have seen. That you do case studies or feedback or interviews to try to find out from the target audience whether they like the message or not. Now we go to the output stage, which is the next stage in the pyramid model. Output has to do with what it is that we are sending out to the audience. So it could be basically it's our messages, whether it is an interview, whether it's an article, whether it's a press release, or meeting with the press, whatever it is, we call these things outputs. Now, as I earlier mentioned, and I stopped midway at the beginning, some call these levels by different names. And that has been identified as one of the challenges that we are having in our field when it comes to measurement and evaluation. The standard, that is, we do not really yet have a standard as to what to name what, because we would, in subsequent models, see that some are calling the outcome stage advanced stage, some are calling the output stage an intermediate stage, and then the input stage a basic stage. Yeah. And as you saw from earlier model, the preparation stage, which is the input stage, the implementation stage is the output, and then the outcome, which is the final stage, which is the impact. So you realize already that they are giving different names to the same ideas. It's like they cannot agree on what names we should use, or what. Yes, let me stay at names. What names they should use to give to the various stages of measurement and evaluation. So back to outputs. So At this stage, we're trying to see number who received messages, number of the messages that have been sent out. And just as we did with the other one where you draw the line, you can see the dots, the dotted lines and the applicable methodologies that it leads to. One interesting thing about this stage of McNamara's model is that it was proposed that there could be a fourth stage. That is, the output stage could be divided into two, which is the output stage itself and then the outtakes. So the output stage will be looking at the number of messages sent, the the number of times they did A or B, all the things that they are sending out, all the correspondence, the activities, number of and then the outtake will be what people have understood or so that's a taking away. So the number who retain messages, for instance, at the top of the middle pyramid, number who retain messages, number who understand the messages. So they are taking something away. Yeah. Number who are considering the messages, they are contemplating the messages. It is proposed that that should be the third stage before the outcome. So you would come across some models that then decided to separate the second stage output into output, outtakes, and outcome. Yeah. All right. So we go to the final stage of this pyramid, which is the outcome. So this is to McNamara, the holy grail. This is what we are looking for or at to change behavior, change attitudes, yeah, to make people act in a certain way or not act in a certain way. And he has given us how we are going to go about measuring or evaluating these things. So let's go to the next model we'd like to look at. These inputs, outputs, or are referring to what we talked about the McNamara model. Now let's look at the PRE process, which is by the CIPR. The PRE stands for Planning, Research, and Evaluation. So the planning stage, the research stage, and the evaluation stage, it's similar to what we have already discussed in other models. So let us look at this PRE process pictorially. Starts with the audit, where you find out how things are now. Now, normally when you hear audit, especially because of the finance people, when you hear audit, you think it is something you do at the end of something. Yeah, but over here, audit also meant things looking at or inquiring into something at the beginning, which is, as we have already realized, formative research. So you see the change of names and titles that we keep talking about today. So the audit is basically the formative research we talk about, trying to find out how things are and how best that information can influence the objectives that we set. Now, when we set the objectives, of course, the next stage will be the strategy or the plan that we would want to put in place to achieve this. And then from there, you see ongoing measurement. So we are moving from audit and then we are going clockwise, setting objectives, strategy, and plan, ongoing measurement. So PIA process is telling us that we keep measuring as we unfold our plans. So in the strategy and plan has to do with in there and the strategy and plan there is implementation there as well and ongoing measurement and then finally we get to results evaluation. But then you see that the arrow points again to audit. It doesn't stop or truncate. That's because it's a cycle. And as you evaluate the results, it can help you to be better able to do subsequent activities better. Now we come to the PR effectiveness yardstick, but by Lindemann. Now, Lindemann says there are three levels of measurement in public relations. That's the basic, intermediate, and an advanced. Basic has to do with looking at your target audience, impression, media placement. So what Lenderman is saying is that When you are measuring, when you measure target audience, that is the impressions, media placements, those things that we talked about as a out, output, when you measure them, they considers that as a basic level of measurement. Intermediate level will have to be looking at, you are looking at measuring retention, comprehension, awareness, reception. And this, if you remember McNamara, will be the outtake session where you're trying to find out what people took away. So what did they retain as a retention? Did they understand? Are they aware? How did they receive the message? So Lindemann is saying that this is an intermediate level of measurement. And for Lindemann, the advanced level is when you are measuring behavioral change, attitudinal change, opinion change, etc. So that is basically what the PR effectiveness yardstick is telling us today. Now we're moving on to the continuing model of evaluation. Now this is by Noble and Watson. Now you see this curious map looking at like a loaf of bread and you wonder what are they saying over here? Now, Noble and Watson are also saying what most have said, that you begin with research, find out how things are now, and then you go about objective setting and blah, 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 blah. Now, you realize that in the previous model that we looked at, the effectiveness yardstick model, the focus was not really on planning or research in the beginning. That is because the effectiveness model was really focusing on what to measure and the levels of measurement. Yeah, not really the process that it goes through, but you see that this model is looking at the process of planning any activity and what you ought to do at the various stages. So after researching this model, you get to set your objectives and then you choose your effects. Remember, the effect will be whether you want them to change their opinion, change A, B, C, whatever it is that you want them to change. And then strategy selection. And then, of course, your tactical choices. And then look at the effects. And then there's a multiple format and informal analysis. That is, there will be formal and informal analysis or evaluation. Formal evaluation is when you actually go ahead to conduct, what we call formal research that you know in your schools. You get your theories, you get your objectives, this and that. You sit down and then you put these things together and then you conduct research to get feedback, what you know. The informal one is where you talk to your colleagues, you talk to one or two customers that you may meet, or clients or target audience that you may meet here or there. Nothing specifically formal. That's why how I'm differentiating it between formal and informal. It's just on the, what do you call it? Is the seat of the pants on the fly. You're winging it, but you're trying to get some basic information or understanding as to what is going on with whatever activity that you're doing at the moment. And then it ends in either staying alive or succeeding. So staying alive, what they are saying is you have to, after the analysis, you have to take decision as to how you're going to stay alive. When we say stay alive, we mean you're going to keep being relevant during the whole process or campaign. Yeah. And then the succeed option is when you finally conclude the campaign or activity, you ask yourself, have I succeeded? But why stay alive and succeed? Noble and Watson's continuing model of evaluation was developed with a longer campaign period in mind. And in the next slide or so, we'll look at a shorter model that they introduced or they looked at. So this continuing model of evaluation was targeted at campaigns that ran very long, sometimes a year or more. And these campaigns often target behavioral change. And Noble and Watson know that behavior does not necessarily change in a month or two or three. Most of the time, it takes a very long time for behavior to change, the highest level of effect that we have looked at in the various models. So they realize that this model is best for that. Now, you would realize over here, let me get the highlighter again from here. The model moves all the way, the arrow comes all the way to research or to objectives or to strategy. And I'm sure you have figured out by now that what they are saying, what Noble and Watson are saying, is that at the analysis stage, whatever information you get will help you in your research stage, objective setting stage, tactical stage, and the various stages that came before the analysis. That's because if it is a long campaign, remember there are short bursts of measurement evaluation going on. Yeah, even if it's for a year, every month or every quarter, you are going to try to measure and evaluate what you are doing so far and see if the feedback you get will help you change your strategy, your tactic, or your objectives, or whatever it is. So that is why you have that arrow going all the way back to whichever stages that you choose to go back to when using the model. We'll be rounding up shortly. We have the short term model of evaluation by Watson. Now, this model was designed specifically for short term campaigns. What do we mean by short term campaigns? Sometimes a PR practitioner or a PR firm may set out a campaign and only focus on short term rewards. What rewards in public relations can be short term? Something like awareness creation, most of the time, awareness creation. Creation of awareness is not as nuanced and it doesn't take as long as changing behavior. Now, Watson had realized that one of the reasons why people did not undertake research was, of course, the know how. They did not know how to do it. And it took time. Of course, it was expensive and it took time to conduct research. So Watson felt if I came up with a short term model which helped practitioners who are only focused on awareness, as we see, simple awareness objective, then maybe we can be able to get such people to conduct measurement or evaluation of their activity. So you see simple awareness objective. And normally when you're creating awareness, your focus is on media relation strategies because that is what will get you the awareness that you need. So the media relation strategy and tactics. And then you look at media analysis and then your target response. So you analyze the media, the various media that you used, which ones are working, which ones are not, the response of your target audience, whether it is good or bad. You look at all those things. And Watson ends with a yes or no. Basically, have you achieved awareness? Yes. Have you not? No. So Watson believes this short model will encourage practitioners who are just doing a short term or a simple awareness objective to be able to also measure their activities. And then finally, we look at the unified evaluation model. Now, Noble and Watson looked at the other models that had been propounded before this, and then they decided to come up with this four-stage level. Now, you realize that this four-stage level, I think we mentioned the output stage in one of the previous models. So basically, that is what the unified evaluation model is also doing. It has an input stage, which is a planning and preparation, the output stage, which is the messages that you have sent out and the targets that you had. The impact stage is whether they have been aware or informed, what they have taken away. So what people have taken away, of course, is different from their motivation or behavior because somebody might take something away that is be aware of certain information but may not act in such a manner. So you may all be aware of the importance of not lecturing in, for instance, your classroom. But the fact that you are aware of this information, which is at the impact stage, does not necessarily move to behavioral change. So this is the unified evaluation model, and you see underneath it there's tactical feedback and management feedback. So tactical because you are continuously evaluating each of these stages, you get feedback. That is tactical feedback. That's why the arrows are on the right side of the picture you're seeing, and also in between. So you see the arrows. Let me get the marker again. Highlight. You see the arrows over here, over there, over here, all over here. So what they're saying is That is the tactical feedback and management feedback that you will be inputting into every stage. So it's like a cycle. You keep doing it until you're able to achieve your aim. So these are some of the models that you would normally come across when you're talking about public relations, measurement, and evaluation. Now, some of these models have been heavily criticized and are not really much in use. And a lot of the others have also are so basic that even today, when new models come up, they still include or imbibe the basic ones that Noble and Watson, McNamara, and Co. have already propounded, as we have seen today.